Do you ever have a great pairing like a chicken salad sandwich and voodoo chips?
Or a confetti cupcake with candles?
And it just makes each part taste different, maybe even better than they would on their own. This is Juxtapose, the podcast where we bring you two tasty pieces of art to see what they're like together. At least that's what we do on a usual episode.
I'm your host, Bea Forkin.
And I'm Sarah Peacher. Let's dig in. So I thought it was so funny that you had candles because then
Yes, I know. I know. I
I
realized I should have said like edible candles, but whatever. It is what it is.
This episode, we are doing a season recap episode. Bea, do you want to kick us off with talking through some of the moments that were meaningful to you, things that stood out, and like themes that you identified?
Yes, I can. So I think celebrity behavior was a surprising theme, and it really took me off guard because I honestly, I really do not think about celebrities. Like, they don't interest me. I don't really follow them. So that was interesting. And then abuse was another one that I noticed, both systemic and domestic abuse. I think of systemic abuse related to the story by Mary Miller from her story collection, Always Happy Hour. And then this short story by Ling Ma, Oranges. I thought Hunger Games kind of fit into that theme as well. And then, of course, Adrian Piper's work that addresses those themes, but I see her work more in line with exploring systemic abuse, specifically racism and sexism. Motherhood also made an appearance with Daniel Orchard's more recent work, which we didn't exactly go into detail about, but I thought of her. The Challengers movie explored motherhood in a subtle way. Baby Mother's entire ethos. Emily Goldstein's poem. Social media, influencer, internet performativity was another big one. Formal structure made an appearance too. I'm thinking of Maggie Milner's Couplets book, Ling Ma's story structure, and the Challengers structure as well. Kidding. Sarah's cat making an appearance too. That was another occurrence.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Happening consistently.
Hero complex was another theme. I'm thinking of Search Party, the story by Mary Miller, wanting to be seen as a hero and a good person. And then randomly, I was just thinking back on that episode, and a highlight for me was when you were sharing about what was the test that you took where it you did this with
Yes. Myers-Briggs.
and that you were potentially your personality was potentially in line with cult leader. So that when I was thinking of that episode, I was remembering that conversation. So I appreciated seeing aspects of the South being brought in, thinking of Flo Milli, Baby Mother, Mary Miller. She's a Southern writer and she writes a lot about settings and characters from the South. Racism was another thread to Flo Milli, Baby Mother, Adrian Piper, and Ling Ma come to mind. As far as wild card episodes, Search Party and Flo Milli came to mind because I remember going to the drawing table with that one, oh my God, how the hell are these two completely random things gonna come together? And then the more I thought about it, I saw connections there, and that was a really fun episode and conversation, I guess. So I think a lot of what this podcast has done overall, or at least the aspiration of it, was to elevate marginalized artists and or experiences and bring them into the spotlight in a way I think they deserve, with the exception of Taylor Swift. Her whole ethos is about being overlooked, which I think really has resonated with a lot of people. Though now it's really hard to occupy that point of view given who she is lately, being kind of in the center of everything and like really dominating everything. Though, all that aside, I really believe in elevating people, experiences that have been pushed aside and given attention, which is an interesting juxtaposition with one of the themes of attention seeking, which was also prevalent throughout the season.
I really agree with many of the themes that you were identifying. Looking to see also how, thinking about Emily Goldstein's poem and how that poem in particular was fitting in with everything. And I guess Adrian Piper too, as they felt a little bit like outliers from the potential threads that were coming through the season, though I think you did place them really well within all of those themes that were happening. But I'm really glad that you pointed out that theme of sort of like parent-child relationships with Goldstein's work again. And I think I see that motherhood was a subtle running theme as well. It was fascinating that social media and its impact came up quite a bit this season with quite a few of our selections and how that related to our conversations around celebrity as well. I think it really just has to do a lot with like the kairotic moments that we're living in. People are thinking a lot about celebrity in a different way than they ever have before, both because celebrity happens so much on the internet and people are made celebrities through the internet. Now we're starting to see some of the repercussions of specifically the celebrities who became celebrities through the internet and the way that people might treat them differently than they would any other celebrity because they feel like they have more access to them. But yeah, it was fascinating that social media and its impact is coming up quite a bit this season. I also totally didn't notice how many voices that we had that were coming from the South, as you pointed out, and at least one from the Midwest as well with Adrian Lanker. And I also noticed when I was writing out the script for this episode, this recap, that we had 2 Adrians this season, even though they spell their names differently. And it's very funny, lucky that we got to have more than one Adrian. I was also thinking about how Taylor Swift made her way in here, though I know I was the one who brought her in, so that's on me. But I thought it was interesting contextualizing her in with that like Southern culture that's coming through and how in her early days, even though she grew up in Pennsylvania, she was tapping into that like Southern ethos, that country ethos, gain popularity and notoriety to begin with. But yeah, so I think it's bound to come up with many a piece of work, but we really explored a lot of different identities throughout the season from a wide array of backgrounds. That idea of seeking attention that came through the season was a really interesting one too, as we really asked the question of, well, who exactly is asking for our attention? Do they deserve that attention, or are they really using it for personal gain? You know, you get something out of getting attention, but do you use it overly to sort of like a following because you want money, because you want to be a celebrity more than anything, more than like actually connecting with fans? So I think the best works from this season explored characters who ultimately learned either to wield attention effectively, like Adrian Piper did, or we had on the other side people who were seeking attention to fill a void. Or there were some characters like Katniss or Lucy Gray from The Hunger Games, and people like Whitney Hansen, our chosen Instagram poet, who reflect back to us as an audience the ways in which we're perhaps too eager to give our attention in order to fill a void on our end. At the end of the day, I feel like we really explored a lot of different ways that human connection is portrayed through our art selections that we made, from parasocial relationships that we're talking about when it comes to celebrity, to cults, to love triangles, and then, you know, just some good old-fashioned sex a la Baby Mother. If you were to pick a favorite episode, what would it be?
It's always hard because I feel like at the end of our conversation, I'm like, damn, I love that episode. I did like Challengers and Baby Mother. I mean, I did love the Flo Millie search party episode. I think those two. What about you?
Top
Yeah.
2 were those.
What about you?
Yeah. I also loved the episode about Challengers and Baby Mother. I finally got my DVD in of Challengers, and that's how you really know that I love a movie, because I have a DVD copy of it because I don't have very many. Like my collection is like this big. So, and I also really enjoyed through that episode getting to know Baby Mother as a rapper better and like finding that YouTube interview of her
Mhm.
with her kids sitting on the porch. I really admire her as a person and how little she lets other people dictate what her art looks like. Like that is very aspirational to me.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely focus more on the I'm making stuff because I want to or because I care personally about the things that I'm writing versus like popularity. And I also love that she knits, and it's making me think about how I need to get back to my crochet project that I haven't touched since last year at some point. I just think that both that movie and that album are going to stay with me for a long time, and the artists behind them are ones that I'm going to keep following. So I'm really happy that we paired them together.
Yes. It was a cool episode. I love that
Yeah.
movie too. I watched it a couple of times already, and I ate a few Challengers inspired
Nice.
churros all summer, and I listened to a lot of Baby Mother. So I consider that a successful summer. And I wanted to say one other thing about Baby Mother. I feel
Mhm.
like her work is in line with Adrian Piper's work as it explores identity, where Adrian Piper is asking that question like, who are you? And like who do you get to dictate who you are versus like how people see you? And I feel like Baby Mother took how people would see her as this bad mom and like build it into like her whole thing of like kind of like a big like F you to people who judge her and judge what it is to be a good mom versus a bad mom. So anyway, I just wanted to say that.
That's a great connection to make too. I love that. My next question for us, what have you been writing and working on creatively this season? And how might it relate to the pieces that we brought in this
Okay, so like
season?
I went on a rant here.
Get into it. I want to,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
but I have a lot to say. Okay, so I've been working with formal structure with my creative writing, and I've been blending together like different forms and genres, which I think is totally in line with this podcast. Is like our whole jam has been about like bringing together different mediums and genres, etc., and like seeing how they connect and intersect. So recently I've been blending together a lot of different forms, and then a certain piece that just recently got published, like think last week now, to brevity. It's an abecedarian and a nocturne, which just means it's like set at night. So those are both traditional like poetic forms, but it's published as an essay. So it's not even published as a poem, though I think it definitely can be read as a poem, but its current form is categorized as essay. So I've been thinking a lot about forms, which is why I've been interested in all the different forms that showed up throughout the season: challengers, lingma, couplets. And then as far as themes, I'm like forever drawn to Baby Mother a lot because of her bravery, and I admire her for all the reasons that you listed above. She's really important to me. So, ideas around motherhood, the mother identity, mother versus artist identity, good mom versus bad mom, these are things that I think about a lot. I think about identity a lot. I think about it now, I think more than ever, actually, especially as I've gotten older. And getting older, I think, just changes the way people see me. And becoming a mother, becoming a homeowner, I guess since I've settled into what looks like and is like a routine or conventional life, and I was drawn to couplets for that reason too, her exploration of identity, the comforts of convention, and using formal structure to contribute to that conversation was really meaningful to me. Adrian Piper too, her exploration of identity. Obviously, she's coming at it through a different layer and lens. I just really appreciate the questions that she's asking. So right now I'm working with the abecedarian form because of its perceived simplicity, because it's related to language, Western language, because it's related to dominant narratives and definitions. And I guess I wanted to resist that and challenge it, especially with the dominant narrative around saccharine motherhood, especially for the NICU piece. That piece explores an aspect of motherhood and birth that's not often included or seen in mainstream stories, which thematically overlaps with a lot of the work that I'm drawn to and have brought to the podcast, which is exploring marginalized identities and experiences. Okay, so for the NICU piece that just got published, like I went back and forth about whether to publish it as a poem or an essay, and I decided to go with the essay because with a poem, a reader cannot always assume that the speaker of the poem is the writer. And I guess I wanted to claim my lived experience. And I also work with really long lines, which is like, I don't know if it's like looked down upon in poetry, but long lines are kind of challenged a lot. And I really didn't want to lose my length of lines. So I'm using this form, abecedarian, a lot to also tackle difficult subject material related to grief and addiction, because I also wanted to communicate that both of those processes of grief and the journey of addiction and recovery, they're not linear. And so I wanted to subvert the linear narratives of recovery and healing journeys in general. So I realize that's a lot to say, but I'm doing a lot of hybrid and juxtapose genre bending writing that I think that this podcast would celebrate, because we've celebrated a lot of things of bending different genres and bringing all these different forms related across the spectrum of like artistic expression. So that's me. So what about you? What are you working on?
I wanted to say, first of all, I have loved seeing you work with such formal structures, but also like explode them in ways and like take them in different directions than is expected. I think that's really cool and amazing. And I absolutely was obsessed with the NICU piece when I saw it and got to read it. So I also wanted to ask you if you would be down to read it and we can record it and include it in this episode.
Yes.
So would you like to do that now?
Okay, so this is it. The original title of this was an abecedarian nocturne for the Valentine's Day NICU moms. Dinty Moore gave me an edit of changing it to an abecedarian nocturne for the NICU moms, which I accepted because it made sense. Okay. An angel got its wings today. The caption reads, beneath a photo of a mother's baby the size of a hand, posted to the Facebook NICU parents page. Night nurse clicks around vital sign jumbo screens. The whir of my breast pump punctuates each beat as I doom scroll through pictures and pleas, endless streams of anonymous internet tragedies. It feels easier than looking at my son's fingers curled into spiraled fists, his wire-wrapped body glowing orange under a lamp, veins as thin as dental floss. An oxygen level sensor hooked to his toe illuminates his entire foot red like a light-up card. I imagine newborn days differently, a plush recliner under Etsy watercolor moon art, juggling him in one arm, guiding his route to a latch with the free arm, just the two of us, me. Kneeling to place him on a 1-month photo op bunny rug, later massaging lavender lotion across his skin folds after library story time with rhyming bouncing songs. My hospital-grade breast pump is on wheels, like IV bags patients push around the hospital ward. Night nurse clears her throat too loud when I forget to refrigerate my milk, or doze off at 3 a.m. and sleep through the every 2-hour pumping alarm. My breasts pulse heat, red scabs burst blood, night nurse snaps a piece of grape gum. Questions rush the Facebook page, they boil to this: will my baby live? Night nurse syringes my milk right through a feeding tube snaked through my son's nose and taped across his lashless face. Suction from the plastic phalanges yanks me raw. My milk splashes pink, then drips. Heating a lactation cookie, I rest my head against the wall until the bottle is full and listen to the low, wet cry in the neighbor's room. Valentine's heart line the fluorescent lit hall, ripped red streamers dangle from ceiling tiles. Wary moms in yesterday's clothes ghost shuffle to the water fountain and peer into rooms with X-ray focus, searching for the answer to our endless scroll, that prayer, that yes, ice will thaw, then melt, and soon spring, then green and home, where there's no night nurse, zero medical beep, only baby's hungry wail and the pat of my bare feet down the moonlit hall. Thank you.
All right, I will take this opportunity now to talk about what I have been thinking about and writing about and how it might relate to what we were looking at this season. So, over the summer, I began drafting this. I guess it's hard to figure out what to call it exactly. It's definitely hybrid work as well. So, I think that it's interesting that we're
Yes.
both doing quite experimental hybrid work. But I started drafting this piece called Astor's Time Book. And the way that this project got started, I was at this like thrift shop in Ohio with a bunch of like antiques. I guess it's more of an antique shop, but it's called the Bomb Shelter and it's a very cool place. Lots of cool stuff there. But I came across this stack of time books, which are what people used to use to keep track of their hours. And these were for specifically plasterers. So they probably were like contract people. So they were like needed to keep track of their hours and stuff by some method so that they could bill their clients correctly or something. I don't know exactly, but they're from the 1950s. So I bought just one of them. I kind of wish I had bought multiple to have some like backups. But this was like the like spark for the project, and I started to think about if I were to fill this out and fill it full of like poetry or like a story of some sort, what would that look like? And I wanted to play around with some erasure, so instead of it being the plasterer's time book, it became Astor's time book. And then from there, I had this one character who was going to be the main character, who is like this organic robot. She grows from the soil, but is also artificial intelligence. And she has this connection with this character known as the gardener, who's like a hologram robot guy. Like he was a human at one point, but his like consciousness has been uploaded to some sort of like
Love
mainframe, and now he only exists in hologram form. So it's all very
I
weird.
love
It led to this project that allowed me to sort of explore like father-daughter
Mhm.
relationships. And sometimes you need that like weirdness and that like the distance of doing something hybrid that's like sci-fi but poetry also to reach into areas that you don't know how to start writing
Mhm.
about, So, and to relate that to some of the stuff that we talked about this season, I definitely feel like it's maybe most closely related to Ling Ma's work because she embraces some of the weird and some of the, it's like very, the realism is so
Mhm.
real and then also the weirdness is so weird. So I feel like reading more speculative fiction like that has helped me start to tap into just experimenting more in my writing and not just having it be like about real life, but also real life 2.0 almost. So
Yes.
I started writing a speculative fiction novel as well. Kind of, I don't know what to call it, maybe a little bit thriller vibes to people in our workshop were saying that it had some like Stephen King vibes, but more of the like spooky, just like
Okay.
spooky vibes, not necessarily the like gore and horror vibes. So, but that is a much more long work in progress that I only started recently, but definitely can also go back to even like last season when we read, oh,
I know
what's it
what
called?
was it
Get in
Kelly
Trouble.
Link?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kelly Link. Yeah. So a lot of like the short stories have inspired some like longer projects for me too, which is cool.
Are you still writing poetry or are you kind of shifting away from poems for now? Or are they still going in the background? Do you see poetry intersecting with this project at all?
Yes, I'm still writing poetry all along the way. I feel like because each poem kind of like pops up occasionally, some of these other projects that have been like, okay, now I'm gonna sit down and do like this lengthy thing has been like good to help me expand the form that my writing takes, but I am still doing like poems, which have been increasingly weird also. Like I'm doing a lot more stuff that is
Love it.
very that's like a bit more like abstract, or like the imagery is like just kind of like out there and like dreamlike and surrealist. A bit surrealist with my poetry. I'm trying to think with like Goldstein's poem. I think some of my work that is actually coming out in my forthcoming
Woohoo!
chapbooks. I think that work really that work really aligns a lot with some of Goldstein's work, especially their first chapbook. It's surprising to me how much like my writing and their writing sort of like is in the same vein and the same like conversation, which is cool. But I think a lot of like poets, when you're getting your start, you think a lot about like your childhood thus far and who and what has made you who you are today. So I think in that sense that like Goldstein has been an inspiration to me, and also like that is the poetry stuff is still happening, still coming out. I'm still thinking about like who or what has made me who I am today, but through a slightly different angle, thinking about like relationships, a lot of epistolary type poems, or like trying to think about writing to specific people. So
That's
yeah.
really cool. Do you want to read any of your work, either your long form project,
Yeah.
poems?
I'm going to read something from Astor's time book. I'm going to read, so each page has like areas that I'm filling out, and there's like a section. It's hard to describe. Do I have it somewhere in here? Because I can do visual. But yeah, this is the time book, Astor's time book, which will be Astor's time book. Each
Oh my
week
God.
looks kind of like this. It's week ending, which I am gonna fill with something, and then there's also job, and then something with that, and then the poem will live in here somehow, and then there's also erasure of this
Wow.
like stuff down here as well.
So
So
cool.
the section I'm going to read, so this is weeks ending with offerings to the universe. Job of sending light out. The gardener caretakes the cosmos first and leaves the tenderest of shoots from harvest at the foot of a stone with a constellation of geodes. And he says it is the embodiment of the cosmos, the one and only. I wonder why he must caretake the universe before the familiar creatures like me. And is this the only way to caretake? Placing best efforts at the altar and watching them rot. My mouth waters when I pass an altar full of food, and it will hurt the gardener to indulge in my desires. And he spends one evening and one morning every week singing beside the stone, sweeping the dust and scrubbing its surfaces. I overhear his thanks to the universe for bringing me to him to be his child, and I am unsure I am a child, his child. And he says the universe sometimes lets the crops fail for a reason, to teach him a lesson. Later light mixed across bases, over sand, Astor hoists ceilings. And then there's just this word, perlite, with a question mark.
Yes.
So yeah, there's that
Beautiful.
poem.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else to say before we go into the end
I
of
was going to
this?
say something that's completely random, and it was like, it came to me on my walk this morning, which is about Katy Perry's attempt to make a comeback and how horrible this album is. Yeah.
Sidebar.
Yes, I know.
Sidebar.
I was like,
Sidebar. B gets rant about Katy Perry.
so she's so cringe. She's so absolutely cringe. And I feel like I'm actually really, this might sound mean, but I'm grateful that her comeback isn't being welcomed, because I feel like it speaks to just a shift in what is working as a pop star now. And it isn't like slapping your ass, which Baby Mother slaps her ass, but it works differently. And just slapping your ass on Instagram I don't know, man. And just like horrible, mindless, vapid lyrics that you have no real connection to in some way. Have you listened to it? What are your thoughts on Katy Perry? It's awful.
I have not listened to it. I saw that it came out and I was like, I should listen to that just to like laugh and have a good time about it. But I definitely heard the song where she was talking about like being heaven sent or whatever. And like the melody was like so like
Yeah.
plain, like really just like da 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 da.
Yes. I don't know. There's just like, there's such a,
Yeah.
yeah, like a
So
desperation to it that goes in line with a lot of our themes, which is why it came to me. Like the attention seeking, there's just such a desperation to
wait,
like be relevant again, but she hasn't really evolved. And I think that there's like jealousy of what's the album from this summer, Brat? Like there's jealousy of that. And then
okay.
also Taylor Swift's position and how Taylor Swift did build her career and how, I don't know, she has more of a been able to sustain and be relevant to her audience.
I think yeah, in a larger sense too, I'm thinking just about how much we ask pop stars or like we crave for pop stars to change every single time that they present themselves to
Mm,
us again. Like what would be so wrong with only slight shifts in what they do, like trying out a few new things instead of like completely I'm going to overhaul my whole personhood. Like I'm gonna create a whole new era. The fact that like that era's tour
mhm.
was a thing that happened and like that we are identifying for ourselves individually too, that like going to be in XYZ era now instead of just like letting life like flow as it does. It's kind of fascinating to me, but also like why do we need to put a label on it every single time or why do we crave being entirely new every single time that an era
Mm.
shifts, you know?
Yes, it's a good question.
And
um,
different
I, yes, I feel like, I mean, I think a lot of people still connect with Taylor Swift because she hasn't changed totally, like her position. And I don't know, like people want to change and grow and keep their like celebrity or their musician or their idol like growing with them. So people crave that, I think, or want that.
yeah. And I can understand like it's good to have things change. And I am totally not anti-change. I don't want to like come across like that at all. But I think I've recognized too for myself as I try out new weird stuff, like I'm still seeing the ways in which like those first things that I wrote or like the things that I've thought about before, the person that I've been before, like all
Mm.
informs the thing that I'm creating now too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes. Well said. I identify with that too.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that sidebar.
Nice.
Yes,
Speaking
change, change, change.
speaking of eras though,
Yes. Are we are we going into our
wow. So the sidebar really
it
worked
really
for us.
did.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we should go into the
All
last
right.
bit.
So this is our final episode of the season. And it's also our final episode of the podcast as we now know it. Sarah has decided to step away from Juxtapose and focus on other projects. So I think the future of Juxtapose, it will still continue, but it will definitely have like a different vibe and format going forward. So I wanted to thank Sarah so much for everything, like your hard work, your creativity, like your behind the scenes tech super wizardness, which like probably isn't that tech savvy, but it is to me. And keeping the project on a schedule, a timeline. I really appreciated this co-host pairing, and I'll miss working on this project with you. So, any last words for this
My
famous
last
last
word.
words?
Yeah. I want to thank you too, B, for all of the rappers that I hadn't listened to before that you brought to me. I enjoyed listening to them so much and seeing other women in that genre and just talking about art in general with you has been really fulfilling. And I feel like we made so many discoveries together that I would not have made on my own whatsoever. So I'm really glad that we got to do that.
High five.
Yeah. And I'm really excited to see what the new era of Juxtapose can be.
Yeah, me too. I don't know what it's gonna be, but well, it'll go somewhere.
yeah, but you all can definitely, everyone who listens to this podcast can definitely keep up with me on Instagram. I usually will post on there, and I am continuing to work on this other project called Off the Page that does a lot of similar things to Juxtapose, but includes some exhibitions and events from time to time. So I'd love to see people there if they are in the Chicago area. But what else? And yeah, my book will come out next year, which I'm going to have to do a lot of work for. So I think it makes it extra helpful that I am able to hand off this project to B and trust that it's going to be in good hands while I go off and do my own thing. Thanks for listening to today's episode about this season, recapping all of the themes and various favorite pieces that we talked about this season. Please check out our website at the link in the description for more information about us and this podcast. If you have feedback or pairing that you would be dying for B to talk about next season, feel free to send us a message on Instagram at Juxtapose Podcast, or send a little email through our website. There's a contact form there. Thank you so much for listening to this season, and we will see you again soon.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Bye.
Bye.